So, 4 years ago, I introduced the world of Super Meat Brothers, which is my take on Super Meat Boy in Super Mario Maker. And it has the distinct honor of killing more Marios than any other stage in Super Mario Maker history, at least according to Steve Gaming. And now I'm back with a sequel, called Super Meat Brothers Forever, of course based on the upcoming sequel to the actual game being Super Meat Boy Forever. And that game has a few differences, chief among them is the fact that it's an auto-runner, which of course I try to replicate in Super Mario Maker 2, by designing an auto-scrolling course where you can't slow down. I also try to work in the new dash ability, as well as a punching ability in a couple of different ways. Now before we get to it, I highly encourage you to try it yourself first, using the code on the screen right now. I put a ton of time into the gameplay experience so that you can kind of discover how it works as you play through it. It's a tough stage, but I think a pretty fair one. I'm not here to troll you or anything. Here's just a little taste of John trying to go through it himself on his first try.
Yep, we got this. Oh god, I'm not ready. Oh man, I'm so scared. No.
Nice try, John. Let me know in the comments if you want to see his whole video and we may post it in the future. Otherwise, again, I highly encourage you to check out the level for yourself before watching the rest of this video. But if not, let's get to it. So here's my playthrough of Super Meat Brothers Forever. And yes, it took quite a few recordings to get right. I'll let the gameplay speak for itself for now, and I'll come back afterward to explain a few things. Hey, we made it, and sure enough, there's Bandage Girl waiting at the end for you. Isn't that great? And of course we have Gusty Galaxy playing, because what better song is there to celebrate your victory than Gusty Garden, I should say. Now if we head on outside, we can reach the goal proper, but first, we need to check out a little Easter egg here, which we also used in the thumbnail for the stage itself, being Mr. Meat Boy himself hanging around up here. So yeah, I thought that was a little fun to add a little touch like that. It's something I like to do in all my stages when I get the chance. So yeah, that's Super Meat Brothers, and I assure you it's not as easy as I made it look there. It took me quite a few tries, but I hope you give it your own shot, give it a try yourself, and I'd love to see how you guys perform on it. I know a lot of people posted videos back in the day of Super Meat Brothers on Super Mario Maker, so I'd love to see your guys' attempts at Super Meat Brothers Forever in Super Mario Maker 2. So with all that out of the way, let's move to the stage creator portion so I can talk about some of the behind the scenes details of this stage. And first off, we have to talk about the game theme and why I settled on New Super Mario Bros. U again as I did with the original Super Meat Brothers. And that's because it's still the best fit for this style of gameplay. Originally, when I first had this idea, I thought Super Mario 3D World might be a good fit because with the catsuit ability, I thought with its ability to do the mid-air pounce, I'm like, oh, that's a perfect way of bringing in the punching or the dashing mechanic from Super Meat Boy Forever. Unfortunately, that isn't the case for a couple of reasons. One, the catsuit's ability where it pounces midair feels quite a bit different from the midair dash in Super Meat Boy Forever. Also, the biggest hurdle is the fact that that style doesn't have saw blades, which are pretty much essential to Super Meat Boy. I could have used the spike blocks instead, but it wouldn't have been the same. You need the saw blades. Also, if I were to have used the catsuit, it would have gotten rid of the one-hit death mechanic that's a big part of Super Meat Boy Forever. So yeah, all that forced me into the New Super Mario Bros. U style, because this is the only other style with a wall jump, which again is essential for Super Meat Boy. Next up is the level theme, because the first level theme you see, at least in the demo we played as Super Meat Boy Forever, is a jungle-like aesthetic. So I needed a jungle or a forest to capture that. Now, unfortunately, New Super Mario Bros. U's forest isn't the best fit for it. It still works. But I feel one of the other styles might have been a little bit better, especially in Super Meat Boy. It even looks like it has Mario-style mountains in the background, so like Mario World or something might have been perfect for this. Unfortunately, alas, I couldn't use it because of the lack of wall jump, but I'm still pretty happy with how it turned out here. And especially with how I tried to match the aesthetics of the course. Because if you watch our gameplay again, you'll see that all the saw blades and all the machinery, like, it's built within, like, almost like a more industrial type setting where there's, like, machinery or, like, concrete or, like, factory elements around it. So that's what I try to do here. I have, like, these hard blocks representing the industrial side. All the saw blades that aren't connected to, like, the blocks themselves are supported by machinery or rails in this case, much as they are in Super Meat Boy Forever. And that's something you can see even more in the underground section, I believe. Or actually, no, I think you probably see it more here. Well, no, you see it in both places. Like, even in cases where even where I'm using the rails for actual purpose, functional purpose, as I am here, where they're following the rail, I extended it to reach the actual wall. And my favorite section is actually back in the sub area, or the main area, where if I can learn how to use a freaking controller, I would show you. Where there we go. Where I have all these things supported. It almost looks like kind of like a tree in some cases. So I thought that was really neat. I'm really big on the little details and theming it. I also added these semi-solid platforms as a background to kind of give it more of a cave-like aesthetic when you're going through these interior sections or more interior sections. That's something I also did in the original Meat Boy. In fact, I think it was all backgrounds in that one. Whereas here, I opened it up a bit because one of the things in Super Meat Boy Forever is that it actually does feel a little bit more intimate, I suppose. Like, the camera is closer, it has a more detailed background, so having the more detailed graphics here actually worked out in this case, and kind of like complemented what I was going for. Let's see. Oh, now here's something big. Okay. So man, how can I talk about the main gameplay? So the main thing with Super Meat Boy Forever is that it is an auto runner. Now, in that game, you actually can pause at points. Like, the camera isn't forcing you to run, it's just that you are running by yourself. But because of, like, different wall jumps or different stop points, you actually can stop in that game. So I tried to replicate that here as best as I could in a few different ways. For one, to handle the basic auto running function, obviously Mario has, it's up to you to run. So to take care of that, I of course used the auto scrolling feature, as you no doubt noticed, put on the fastest speed. I was considering using the custom scroll for a while, but then I realized it doesn't work in the sub area, which sucks. So I figured rather than dealing with that and trying to map out the camera in only one area, I would just use a fast speed, period. And so I built every level around the idea, or every section of the stage rather, around the idea of you running at top speed. Basically, if you're not running at top speed, there's a good chance you won't be able to finish the level. But I designed it with that in mind, explicitly, and that's where something else comes into play here. You may have wondered why I have these little sections where you run on the treadmill. So for a couple reasons. One, originally, so in Super Meat Boy Forever, there are these multiple sections where you'll have to crouch underneath these saw blades as you're sliding underneath them. Unfortunately, there was really no great way of replicating that in this game without it just being like a single saw blade, because when you crouch, you generally come to a stop, and in an auto-running level or in an auto-scrolling level, that won't work. So I realized that wasn't going to work in my case. Just having these little saw blades you have to kneel under. Because also, even as little Mario, crouching makes no difference. He's the same height, so it wouldn't matter if you're crouching or not. You can run underneath the saw blades by default, regardless. So I abandoned the idea, but then I realized quickly as I was working on the stage that, as you'll see here, and as you may have already noticed, as you're running, Mario actually runs faster than the stage scrolls, which is a problem because you can't see what's happening eventually. But as you can already tell, that's where those sections come into play. That's when I brought them back. I'm like, oh, this would be a perfect fit. If I slam you into those, you have no choice but to go through them. I'll put a conveyor belt running in the opposite direction. It'll slow Mario down, giving the screen a chance to catch up. That's also partially why I have these wall jumping sections where I do. I mean, you have to have these regardless because Super Meat Boy needs them, so that's how the game works, and wouldn't be very Super Meat Boy like without them. But that's another reason I put this one here in particular, to slow you down even farther. So yeah, I went through painstakingly trying to find the best, best points of when to slow you down and when to have wall jumping like here, where you have to bounce back and forth. So I tried to disguise it. It's almost like elevator load times. I tried to disguise when I'm slowing you down in the game. And I feel like it also gives you like a nice little break briefly, as you continue onward. So yeah, I very much, so yeah, I thought I was pretty happy with that solution. Now here's something else. I was working. So another big mechanic of Super Meat Boy Forever is the fact is they can now punch. It's basically what you can do with the dash as well. It's like dashing and punching. It's basically the same move, I believe. So I was trying to figure out how I can replicate that in this style, because again, I was thinking of the cat suit originally, but that wouldn't work for any number of reasons. So I was stuck in this style where you can't really attack in midair. And that's when I had the idea is, hey, what if you had the power block instead? You just throw it at the enemy, and it kind of feels like you're punching. And sure enough, that worked. Unfortunately, originally I was going to make this a much bigger focus of the level, where you're just throwing power blocks constantly, including in the air. But I quickly learned it's a pain in the butt to aim in the air. It's the enemy moves just enough where if you're jumping or if you're in the air while throwing it, there's a good chance you're going to miss. And it's made for a frustrating gameplay experience and wasn't fun. So I dropped the idea entirely until I had the idea of when I was basically done with the basic design of the stage. I was trying to think of how to wrap this stage up, and that is when I had the idea to, well, I had a few different ideas, and that is, if I can get over here. So I wanted to kind of like, so let me skip around a little bit here. So I wanted to have like a nice little fun way to unwind, and that's why I decided to add this slope section where you're running down this collapsing terrain, because there is collapsing terrain in the game as well. There wasn't a great way to replicate it exactly as it did there. Donut lifts don't drop fast enough for them to work, so that'd be fun to just make it the final part of the level where it doesn't really matter. It looks like it matters, but you're gonna run down here. There's almost no way to screw it up. It looks intense, but then you reach the end, and then you rescue Bandage Girl, and which I rebuilt here, as you can see. Anyways, so before that, I thought it'd be fun to have another little section where you have this like staircase leading up to it, which is also from the game itself, with these saw blades. And then I realized this might be a good spot to add the enemy idea back in, where you have these flying blue enemies, just like in the game, and I use a rail to keep them in place. And then, and where I use a power block so you can punch them. And I'm like, yeah, because I felt like in the original game, in my original Super Meat Brothers level, I had a boo at the end to mimic one of the enemies from the original game. And it just didn't feel right in having some kind of new enemy here. So that's why I decided to throw them at the end in a easier part of the level, I think. But it was using a new mechanic at the point I added them. Which was a bit of a problem, because even though it's kind of self-explanatory, it hits you so fast, I'm like, crap, people are going to get hung up here and not realize what they need to do right away. That's when I went back to the first area, and, how do I get back there? And try to find a spot where I could slot one in to give you an idea early on as to how to use the power blocks, and that's when I realized this spot over here would be pretty good for it, so... yeah, and I think it works pretty well. Like, if you screw up, it's early enough in the stage, it's not a big deal. So, there you go. Speaking of screwing up, another thing I challenged myself on, or pondered myself on, was whether I should have checkpoint flags or not. Ultimately, I decided on it. I felt like it would just make for a more streamlined gameplay experience. But the original game, or my original stage, didn't in the original game, because the original Super Meat Boy didn't either. However, I believe Super Meat Boy Forever does, so I felt like it just made sense to have it here, especially with the divide between the main area and the sub area. Also, by the way, I don't know if you noticed this. Originally, I had a solid wall here, stop scroll, so it would stop scrolling. But I wanted to convey the idea that, hey, you're not done yet. You have to keep moving. So I actually made the wall broken so that the scroll keeps on going no matter what. So it kind of forces you into the warp pipe. And in my gameplay video, it's a clean take where you're just running constantly. There's not a point where you're not running, which is the feeling I wanted to convey. Now, speaking of scroll stops, that's how I implemented one of the other mechanics of Super Meat Boy Forever, where the camera does stop every now and then, or where you can stop. And the way I did that here is by making these solid walls using partially ground, partially hard blocks. Which here, let me bring Mario over here. Hopefully I can show you. See, the screen stops, and it stops just long enough to give you a chance to kind of like do some maneuvering as you maneuver into the next section. And the way that works is I have these bombs on a timer going down this rail, and they explode just at when they reach the bomb here to create an opening in that gap. If I didn't die to have shown it better, but you see what I'm getting at. Now the reason I had them all stacked vertically is so they all spawn at the same time, and they get into place exactly where I need them. Similarly, I did the same thing over here to stop it again, and then another time down here. So stop it at 3 points to kind of really try and mimic that gameplay feature. Now, as part of this all, again, I designed the stage with the idea that you're running a top speed constantly. So hopefully you get. So basically, you have to reach this point at just the right, or basically. With that in mind, rather, you'll reach these saw blades at hopefully just the right point where they'll be just going up the wall. Sorry, this stage does not work when you're trying to show it off at not the right place, but these saw blades, go up the wall at just the right point when you can jump in the gap between them, and I was really happy with figuring out the timing on this, just to make it feel really organic, where you never have to slow down artificially. If you're doing it right, you should be going at full speed constantly. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. There's not too much else to say beyond, beyond the idea of recreating the characters here with Bandage Girl, including her flower in the hair. I used the bombs for the eyes because that shows up really good in the thumbnail. Now she doesn't. I didn't use her in the thumbnail itself, but I did use Meat Boy himself in the thumbnail, which you can see just above here. Which I hid as an Easter egg, as I said earlier. Also, I totally forgot that I actually did have another Super Meat Boy over here as well. I meant to get rid of it before I posted the stage. Oops, it doesn't matter. You can't see him in the stage anyway. So it's another Easter egg there for you. I created the bandages on top of them as well, including the chipped tooth. Oh, did I forget? Oh man, hold on. Did I forget? Oh, now I'm gonna be bummed if I forgot to replicate this one thing. Please. Hold on. Oh, this is stressful. Okay, no, I got the chip tooth. All right. So the earlier Meat Boy is the beta version. This is the final one with the chip tooth there. So thank God I didn't forget. Man, it is stressful uploading courses because you can't. Once it's up, it's done. It's out there. And there's a point where you just have to stop working on the level, and I'm always afraid I missed something. And yeah, so thankfully I didn't miss that detail. Anyways, guys, that is Super Meat Brothers forever in a nutshell. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please go check out the stage itself if you haven't already. I think it's a lot of fun. I put a lot of work into creating it, so it's hard, but not unfairly so. I try to make it as fair as possible, and try to make it as faithful to the original game as possible, while making it playable as well. So there you have it. Again, the code's on the screen if you want to check it out. And I'm about done here. So thank you for watching, and make sure to click the subscribe button and ring that bell if you haven't already to make sure you stay on top of all our videos, because we'll have tons more, whether it's levels we're creating ourselves or levels we're showing off. Alright, I'm done talking. We'll catch you later. Bye.